Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, going to go over an email I was sent from a subscriber. That's from a guy. He is 57 years old, and he's sharing his story, his multi-decade story of going over 40 years, about he, like a lot of guys, made a lot of boneheaded mistakes starting when he was young because he didn't know any better. This type of content wasn't out there. Married young, wrong girl, married in the military, all that. And you're going to see here in this story, guys, again, this is a time period before social media, the feminist movement really starting to have the impact it did today, dating apps showing that the gals do the same crap that they do today, back then 40 years ago. And this knowledge and the things I talk about in this channel and all the videos is timeless. It doesn't make a difference what time period it is, whether it's nowadays or ancient Rome. Women are women. They do what they do, and us guys do what we do. Or wherever you live on the planet, or what your socioeconomic background is the same freaking thing. But you're going to see this entertaining story, guys. Again, he makes lots of mistakes, but he at least learns. And the gal that he's with, well, let's just say he ultimately is living a good life all these years later. Her, not so much. So for you guys that enjoy these long stories for the long drive or when you're hitting the gym, you'll appreciate this one. And of course, this guy gets a lot of smacks along the way, regardless if he had access to YouTube back then or not, which obviously there was no such thing. So it starts off, says, hello SSM. My name is Brian. I'm currently 57 years old. Over the past year, I've become hooked to your channel over my wife's demise. He says, don't worry, she's okay. This is the third time writing to you on my story because after my first submissions, I kept remembering that I forgot to explain or tell something else, so I hope you'll forgive me. So here goes. Over the past year, after listening to other YouTube channels about the dating scene and how a majority of modern women think in relationships in today's day and age, I stumbled across your channel. Listening to the large amount of stories on how men kept getting screwed in relationships brought back the sad memories of my first marriage. And let me tell you guys, this guy definitely gets royally screwed, but he, like so many guys, didn't have this knowledge. I write this story for several reasons. The first of which is that people always ask, why do you guys not see or avoid the red flags, or why do you guys stick around, or something like that. The second reason is to show that even way back then, before the internet was around, this stuff was happening. And my final reason is to get this off my chest. I met my first wife in high school. We instantly connected and enjoyed each other's company. The only wedge we had was that she was black and I was Hispanic, and my father was a major bigot. For some reason, I was a person who always had the mindset of being respectful and listening to my elders, especially my parents. Well, that's how it should be, as long as, you should be that way, but some elders are a-holes or morons, and you'll learn that. But I was raised to respect your elders. Someone's older than me, I, sir, Mr., Mrs., Miss, always. Yes, sir. A little more on my dad. He was a condescending, conceited, and controlling a-hole, and had been married 3 times with 14 kids scattered. Sounds like he's a Chatter Tyrone, huh? Low life. I blame him on the crappy lives most of my brothers and sisters ended up with. Anyways, besides all that, I still felt bad knowing he didn't approve my girlfriend at the time, so I cut it off. Now, don't get me wrong about my dad. After listening to the many stories posted on your channel, I understand women are most likely the reason most marriages fail, but if I were to guess, my dad was more of a Chad and Tyrone type and just couldn't keep it in his pants. Well, Chad and Tyrone are always going to be Chad and Tyrone, and they can't keep it in their pants. Those types always have to spread their seed, and you saying you are of 14 brothers and sisters, that proves my point. A couple of years later, I reconnected with her again. We will call her Sasha, and of course, my dad didn't approve. I was 19 at the time, and believe it or not, was still living at home. Well, with that kind of dad, that sounds miserable. On my dad's first divorce, he actually got custody of me and my 3 older sisters. My other siblings, the moms, got custody of them. And they all ran away from home during their teens. That's another indication of how life was there. When he found out about Sasha and told me I was on restriction for a month, I had enough and left home on bad terms with him. I ended up staying in my real mom's house and would also stay at Sasha's house, not sleep in the same room as she was 18. She lived with her grandmother in the projects along with her instigating cousin and klepto aunt. Klepto aunt? Her grandmother was a raging alcoholic and was always cussing and complaining all the time. I felt sorry for Sasha to have been brought up in that kind of environment. When her mom met me, she hated my guts because I was not black. Okay, so your dad hated her because she was black, and your girlfriend's mom hated you because you weren't black. What a wonderful world. There was even a time when her mom got drunk and pulled a weapon out on me. It was a chaotic world indeed. Well, that's when you depart and don't look back. Because you're with a girl whose family hates your guts because of what background you are, and somebody's a raging, mom's a raging alcoholic, somebody's a raging alcoholic in that family, and all this turmoil and drama. You don't need that shit in your life. Now, fair enough, your dad's an a-hole too, but you left. These are important things, guys. You got to pay attention to the girl's family, because that is how she's going to be in a relationship, because she's just been conditioned. Are there exceptions? Yes, of course. There's some people who grew up in shit households, and they swear, I'm not going to be like my parents, and they actually are not. But by and large, that's how they end up down the road. And even if that's not how your girl is, that family is going to be a part of your life if you get married to her and have children. Be aware of that. On a side note, someone would ask, why would I turn my back on my dad for her? Well, it wasn't just because of her. She was just the final result. My dad was mentally abusive. He would 90% of the time just always cut me down and say negative things. My stepmother once told me I'd never amount to anything and could never survive my own. My 3 older sisters running away from home, as mentioned already, was another example of how life as a kid was in that household. There's so many kids that grow up in shit households like that. It's just the scum of the earth typically breed a whole lot and mess up with kids' minds, and then those kids often become just like their fucking parents. It's really a vicious cycle. I was so fortunate to grow up in a household of loving parents. My dad had 2 more kids, my stepmom, a brother 10 years younger than me, and my sister 12 years younger. As a teen, I practically raised them after my fallout and leaving home. They were my one big regret. I felt so bad leaving them behind. You felt bad, but dude, you had to take care. You couldn't stay in that environment anymore, because probably at some point you and your dad were going to get into a fist fight, and probably someone would end up in prison or in the great beyond. So enough about that. Now to the relationship. I was in love. Smack. How many guys have said that? And that was the beginning of their downfall. My solid belief was the first woman I ever married would be the one and only for life. I would never leave her, never cheat on her, and die for her. Smack. Quite the opposite of your father, huh? Yet, as we were seeing each other, there was one problem that I did not understand until hearing many of your stories. Red flags. I can't really describe them all, but they were there, and deep within my gut, I felt something was wrong. How she was disrespectful to me, and how she spoke with some other guys we met were just some of the issues. I would get jealous, but held it in and try to talk about it, but we would just end up arguing. Yeah, your gut told you, or it was quite obvious she was being disrespectful to you. You called her on it, and of course she found reason to blame you for the way she's behaving. And let's not forget her family background. So cut things off right there when you saw her wacko family, and then she was mistreating you. But we're just getting started on the bullshit, guys. But here's my little theory here. A lot of guys that grow up in fucked up families where there's no love and turmoil and all that, or even if their family was stable but there really wasn't a lot of love, it was a cold environment, they then try to seek out what they didn't get from their family life in future relationships. And these are the guys that fall hard for women and fall in love, want them to love them back because they didn't get the love from their mom and dad. And they act needy and clingy and put up a lot of shit they shouldn't and become a pleaser mentality. Then all hell goes, as you all can imagine. Now, to address the question on why I didn't just leave her is a simple fact to any young, inexperienced guy. I would simply say to myself, I'm imagining things about to ruin my relationship with the person that I cared about the most in my life. We ended up getting married about a year later. Smack! What were you, like 20, 21, 22? You're out of your damn mind, but I get why you did it. I'm convinced. Shitty family life, you won her love. You want a family of your own to start over. He says, yes, I know, smack, but I didn't know any better. After that, we had a falling out with her family and left and tried to survive until we were almost homeless. I called my dad to ask if I could come home, but after he said to me, he hung up the phone. When he did that, something changed in me. That inner belief, pride, or whatever you want to call it. As bad memories came rushing back on how much of a jerk he was, I swore to myself that I would never call him again, and that he wanted to speak with me, he would have to call me instead. I believe this was the first time I had a nibble of the red pill. Dude, whatever you want to call it, you were done. You know, you're 21 years old, you're now married, grown-ass man, you got to find your own way to take care of yourself. And the last thing you want to do is any help from that motherfucker. During this time, it was hard to get by, so I ended up joining the Navy to help our situation. I always believed that marrying while in the military would never work out, but at the time, it was my only option I had to save us. And how'd that work out for you? How many stories have I done about guys, military guys, saying, don't get married in the military. Don't do it. The second you're deployed, she's like, bye. That ring comes off. She's off to the local bar with her girlfriends, hooking up with another freaking sailor or Marine or whatever. While I was being recruited, we met a lot of other sailors, and everything was going fine. A couple weeks before I was leaving for boot camp, I found a torn-up letter in the trash can and put it together to read. It was a letter my wife wrote to a guy we met during the recruitment process, and in it she stated she didn't have a boyfriend. Boyfriend, husband, same freaking thing. I was really angry and confronted her, and she excused by saying I was her husband, not her boyfriend. And that's what she meant. What a little bullshit. It's the same thing. Looking back now, I believe that was the moment I should have left her. Dude, you should have left her a while before that. Because that was the moment. But why did I stay? Because once again I told myself I was jumping to the wrong conclusions. I was going to ruin our marriage over suspicions that could be false. But my gut was telling me otherwise, and I ignored it. Yeah, smack. Guys have to go through so much bullshit until they learn. You have to get to the point, guys, the second you see bullshit, you check them. And if they gaslight, twist things around, you're like, all right, see ya. Have a nice life. And the irony is, behave like that, they'll chase after you because now you're behaving like Chad or Tyrone. After boot camp, we moved into an apartment close to where I was stationed in San Diego, California. Now, people who don't understand how the Navy works, for the time, you're in the Navy and assigned a ship. Your schedule is a rotation of 6 months out to sea and 6 months at your home base. During my first 6 months out to sea, my wife ended up joining the Navy as well and was actually stationed in San Diego with me, luckily. My first 6 months out to sea came and went and seemed fine. While I was out, she wrote to me many times and called and talked to her whenever we hit a port. When I got back, everything seemed good as well, but things had changed. Oh, gee, I can't wait to hear this. I can't put my finger on it, but during this time, the red flags really started popping up again. Constantly arguing and fighting and hardly any bedroom fun at all. You don't see each other 6 months, you're supposedly so in love, and you get back and all you do is fight and argue. And of course, no sex. This sounds like a great situation. Remember, if she ain't getting it from you, she's getting it someplace else. Until my second marriage, and he goes, yeah, I know, smack, I thought this was normal. It was when I was on my second cruise out to sea for 6 months, it all fell apart. 1 month out to sea, and I stopped getting letters from her. Oh, I guess something happened to her. After that, when I hit port, I tried to contact her. She would never pick up the phone. To sum it up, for the next 5 months, not a word from her. So for all you know, she could be dead in the gutter. Did you call the police? Something? I mean, were you aware that she was actually physically alive? Was she just ignoring you, not responding to your calls or letters or anything like that? Divorce. Take the hit. Move on. During this time, we stopped in the Philippines for 2 weeks with women and prostitutes throwing themselves at me constantly, and I stayed faithful. I stuck to my morals, to being faithful to the only woman I loved at the time. Yeah, do you think she's doing that for you? 1 week before I got back, I got one letter from her telling me not to take my share of my paycheck. She was getting 80% of it because the check was going to bounce. No, I love you. No, I miss you. Nothing but that. When I returned home that very night, some guy was calling her on her phone. She said it was a friend, but I told her to knock it off. I'm her husband, and she shouldn't be doing that. Dude, you're not her. You may be legally her husband, but you're not her husband. We got into a fight, and when we slept, she put a pillow in between us. I thought this was odd, but kept it to myself. The following day, I found that she had bounced 51 checks in our bank account. That's a record 51 freaking check. I can't imagine the overdraft charges. Because every time you bounce one, you get a fee. And then a negative balance fee and all the other fees the fucking bank throws at you. I took her name off the account and told her from now I'll be paying the bills. Why are you not ending with her, dude? Jesus. She didn't like that. During this time, she would come home late at least twice a week. Why weren't you checking her? Why weren't you laying down the law? Why weren't you, and I know why, because you grew up in a shitty family and you desperately wanted a different family and love and all that. And by being too nice and caring and making her the center of your hopes and dreams for a second start, this is what you get. And remember, her fucked up family that you saw before you got married to her, that whole environment, they influenced her. Anyhow, things just seemed off, you think? The straw was when on New Year's Eve, she said she was going out with some friends and would be back later that night. Girls' night on New Year's Eve. She didn't return until after 3 days. During this time, a hole started growing in my heart. It kept getting bigger and bigger. It wasn't an a-hole, it was a hole of rage or hatred. However, it was a hole of sadness. This was the one. This was my lifelong person. In the end, I saw it for what it really was. This was a person who didn't give a shit about me. It's so hard to describe how I felt at the time. Defeated, angry, sad. It was the lowest time of my life. I can imagine, bro, but you know what? Plenty of dudes, and plenty of dudes in the military, I might add, have been through the same bullshit. And they ended it, and they moved on, and that was that. But again, this guy had no role model. No one to tell him, no one to teach him. That's why I do what I do on YouTube, guys. When she returned, I told her I couldn't take this anymore, and I'm leaving. We got into a big fight, and then she left instead, probably to go to stay with her Chad. She told me how she heard about how the Navy guys fool around with foreign girls, and insisted that I was probably cheating on her while out to sea. Unreal. I filed for divorce, and since she made the same amount of money, we had no kids, he says in parentheses, I told myself I would wait at least 5 years for having any kids in a marriage after seeing how screwed up my family was, because my dad couldn't keep his dick in his pants and didn't care. Our break was clean. During this time, I went into a depression and just stayed home and work. My story is over, however, and now here are some of the insights I learned from channels like SSM. So before he goes in part 2 of this, I'm going to say this. Notice when he divorced her, he said it went pretty smooth. No kids. I don't think they had a house. He said the breakup was clean. Imagine if he'd done this earlier, how much suffering he would have saved himself. But some guys truly, well, no, let me rephrase that. A lot of guys, most people, they have to truly hit the fucking wall before they finally make a change. It's amazing. Whatever that wall is. And it isn't just guys, it's also women too. And I get you want to try to make things work and all that, but when someone is just being awful to you, there's no point. After the divorce, 2 weeks before going out to sea on my third cruise, I came home to find a recording on my answering machine. It was my soon-to-be ex upset and saying she's going to stay with me for a week, and then go stay with her mother. I figured her and Chad must have had a fight. Maybe we're going back in time here. I'm a little mixed up on the timeline here. I told myself she sure as hell isn't coming here, and I was ready to turn her away. But she never came. Apparently something went wrong with her and Chad, and she wanted to get away from him. The day before I was leaving to go out to sea, she called me and asked me if I was looking for her. I told her no, I will never look for her again, and hung up. Good for you, man. I'm sure that felt good. That was the last time I ever heard her voice. I believe this is the second time I took a nibble from the RP. I never spoke with her again, and from the last day she called me, a month after going out to sea, she wrote me a letter. It stated that she was very sorry and didn't mean to hurt me, and she was now pregnant. What I tell you, they always come back. And typically the reason they come back is they got themselves in some sort of trouble, and they need you, the stable one, the one that has resources, the loyal, loving one, who they treat like dog shit the entire time of the relationship. They see you as the easy meal ticket. So right here. She's so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And oh, by the way, yeah, I'm pregnant. It's like, so? Not my problem. I tore the letter up and tossed it in the garbage. Years later, I got curious to see how she was doing in life and searched and found her. She was living with her mother in Arizona and had 2 kids and still had my last name. To this day, I'm waiting for an adult male, man or woman, to come to my house, knock on the door, and declare I'm their dad. I'll simply reply, was I ever with you to put you to bed or read you a book? Did I ever attend any of your birthday parties or school sports? Did I ever hold you in my arms and rock you to sleep? That would be a no. So it means I'm not your father because I would never abandon my kids ever. Now go find your lying mom and slap her in the mouth. Hope YouTube doesn't flag me for that. Obviously, these aren't your kids because you obviously were having relations with her. Isn't that amazing? She's hooking up with other dudes, calls you because she's pregnant, and maybe thinking you'll think that's your kid. You weren't sleeping with her. After this, I was reluctant to date. I had a meeting with this one girl who had what I now know was red flags, but once again, I ignored them. It's amazing the bullshit guys got to go through, and the same mistakes guys keep making over and over again. So they connect the dots. Oh, I do this, she treats me like shit. I do this, she worships the ground I walk on. Imagine that. Then one day we had a date planned, and when I called her to remind her at what time I'm picking her up, she asked me if she could smoke pot in my car. I explained to her that it would be bad because it would be in my system and I could get me in some serious trouble if I pop positive on a random drug test that they have every week in the Navy. She flew off the handle and screamed like I didn't want to go with a druggie and just forget the whole thing. Oh, what a great girl. Goodbye. I calmed her down and said, fine, you can smoke, no worries, I'll see you soon. Smack. You're just telling her she can treat you like crap. She's throwing number one, she wants to smoke crap in your car, potentially impacting your job, you in the Navy. And then she throws a tantrum and then you cave. What the hell? Now here's when something happened. After I got the phone, a voice in my head yelled at me, what the hell are you doing? Why are you allowing this? This B is nothing to me. I just gotta have a toxic relationship and now I'm gonna stick around for this crap. I called her back and said, you know what? You're right. I don't want to go out with any drughead. Bye. And hung up the phone. No cell phone, so no response, which was good enough for me. That was the moment I ate the whole RP, every piece. Good for you. Finally standing up for yourself. In fact, I probably turned her on. Now here's where my chapter turns dark. And I do some things, I know you don't approve of. Now watch this, guys. I became a chatter tyrone. I became hardcore RP'd. I didn't give a crap. If any woman I dated showed any signs of red flags, they were dumped ASAP. I got no problem with that. There were pumps and dumps, and I didn't care if they had boyfriends or were married. Smack. So you were that a-hole that was banging girls that had boyfriends or husbands. Yeah, real nice. You're turning into your dad. How's that sound? Not cool, gentlemen. Not cool. Got to have a code here because the girls do this shit. We shouldn't be doing it. But I'm convinced the reason that guys in this situation, he obviously was blue pill Mr. Nice Guy forever. Look where it got him. So he flipped the script and became the a-hole. And guess what? He's got girls lining up and pumping and dumping them. And didn't care about their boyfriends or husbands. And I'm convinced the reason he and guys like this, he became like this and did this knowing that they had boyfriends and husbands because he hated that side of who he was for so long. So essentially, he was punishing guys that were like what he used to be. He saw them as weak. Therefore, he figures, hey, these guys, girlfriends and wives, are cheating on them, so they must be weak guys. They deserve to be punished for being that weak because deep down he loathed who he was once. That's what I think. That's my theory. Fucked up, that's my theory. Looking back, I asked myself, why was I that way? Why was I such an a-hole? I have no excuse, and see, I was an a-hole. The amazing thing is that you always state on your channel, the women just flock to this kind of behavior. It's just unreal. It is unreal, but that's what happens. And so when you hear women complain, I don't care who it is, your sister, female acquaintances, female co-workers. I wouldn't be dealing with the female co-workers. Anyone they complain about this guy was such a jerk, and he did this, and does all these things, and yet that guy's still in their life, and they still take him back no matter what he does. Don't waste your time listening to this crap. Say, hey, you keep this guy around, don't fucking complain. I know this is quite long now, but there are a few things I must say, plus I knew something for your listeners to learn. First thing is, I have been married now for my second wife for about 25 years. So you did it again, except this time you did it right, huh? We dated and lived together for about 3 years prior. I love her with all my heart, but I'm always on alert and wary. My only daughter has graduated from college and is making very good money. Well, congratulations, man. At heart, I know you're a relationship guy, and that's what you really want all along. You went through hell the first time. I think you went through hell, learned your lesson, then you were an a-hole for a long time, very much an a-hole. And now you took that knowledge into your second marriage, and you were able to lay down the law, and therefore then kept order and all that. My daughter's a publicist. From the very beginning, I let my wife know that if she ever cheated on me, I would leave her on the spot. Very good. Establishing boundaries. That's what you must do. If she ever cheated without my knowledge and decided to come clean, I would leave her on the spot. However, to make up for the past sins, I've never cheated on my wife, but have had plenty of opportunities. I remind her of this from time to time and also check her on her BS, which, as our marriage goes longer, becomes more frequent. You're going to be with somebody for 25 years, you're going to butt heads. The guys that say that I've been with my wife for all this time, we never fight, after 20 years, really? She's banging somebody else. There's no love or relationship there. You're just roommates. It doesn't work that way. Doesn't mean you got to be fighting all the time, but you're going to have disagreements. Where was I? I did marry her when she was too young, me being 29 and her being 20 years old. She was too young, man. So there was a time I allowed her to do girls' nights out with her friends, but clearly warned her about screwing around and even went along for some of them. I watched and kept on guard, and so far, zippo. It only lasted a while, and now after listening to your videos, I lay down the law by telling her no more girls' nights, and if her friends don't like it, give me the phone. That hasn't happened so far. My father finally got on the phone and spoke with me after my sister got a hold of me after 15 years. 15 years you didn't talk to your scumbag dad. He told my sister he never hung up the phone on me, but better not tell me that, or I'll let him know that what it sounds like. Ching. Have nothing to do with your dickhead dad. During my Chad and Tyrone days, I was fooling around with this married woman who had a husband and 2 kids. Dude, you're a fucking lowlife. I know, smack. One night, a thought came to my mind, and I asked her a question. I asked her, when she slept with her husband, do you put a pillow between both of you? And she answered yes. So, for you married guys out there who have wives who suddenly do this, you now know why. Remember in the story he said his wacko first wife put the pillow between them in bed? That's why. Same thing here with this woman who's cheating on her husband. And all these stories, they're just sad. No matter what you do, you can't make someone love you the way you love them. Keep them coming, brother. Love your content. Hope my story didn't bore you. Brian. Oh, Brian, it's a good story. You know, wasn't any major groundbreaking story or a crazy twist or anything like that. It's just a story of life. Multiple decades. All this bullshit was going on 40 years ago. It's the same shit that goes on now today. This is why it's so important, guys. Listen to the channel. Listen to these stories. Pay attention to these things. And that way, in their personal lives, whether they just date or hook up, in their marriage, they can learn what to do, what not to do, etc., etc. And I'm glad your life's going well. I think it's great. You learned a lot of hard lessons. You definitely took a wrong turn with your Chad and Tyrone days. You're knowingly banging guys, wives, and girlfriends. Karma's going to come back to bite you in the ass, my friend. I'm telling you right now. Even all these years later, you're lucky one of those guys didn't come after you and take your head off. But I'm glad you're in a happy marriage, mostly. You have a daughter you love, you know, and your ex from the first marriage, no surprise, living with her mother. 2 kids, probably from 2 different daddies, out in Arizona. But anyhow, and of course, she came trying to get you to come back after she got pregnant. Anyhow, guys, good one. Hope you all enjoyed it. I know a lot of you guys like these long ones. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Don't let this guy know what you think. And guys, as always, if you got a good story like to share, definitely email it to me. strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. Just make sure you write it well. Make it easy for me to read. I get great stories sometimes, and they're all jammed together, and it takes me time to have to go through the fucking thing and separate paragraphs and all that. Remember, the easier it is for me, the more videos I can pump out, you know? And also, this goes for good, crazy stories you find online, which I can do on the They Did What channel, or shorter, crazy stories for the SSM Clips. Trying to crank out on a typical day at least 3, sometimes 4 a day. Took the past weekend off, Labor Day week, because I needed a break. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.